So there's been numerous, quite intense, heavy-handed arrests here today. We walked around there was probably a good 2 hours where there was no arrest, no anything. It was quite peaceful until...
This bloke here is not here for any purpose of reason. Putting him under arrest. But this guy here is going to be placed under arrest right now. Well, I'm under arrest.
I'm just going to stop here for a second. As you can see, I was just doing my job. There was no one even around me. The bloke marched up to me while I was doing a piece to camera. You can actually hear me laugh because I seriously thought he was joking. If you watch my content before, you'll know that sometimes cops walk up to me and banter a little bit. You know, I guess they like my work or they appreciate it or they find it funny or they see my sense of humor and they join in. But I quickly realized that this power-hungry commander was not bantering.
No arrest, no anything. It was quite peaceful until...
This bloke here is not here for any purpose of reason. Putting him under arrest. But this guy here is going to be placed under arrest right now. Well, I'm under arrest.
I am media. I'm media. I've got my permit in my pocket. My permit is in my pocket. I'm fine. I've got my permit in my pocket. I work for Rebel News. I am lawfully here. I've got my permit in my pocket.
So what is more shocking, folks? The fact that a journalist was physically assaulted by law enforcement for absolutely no reason? Or the fact that this odious event did not happen in North Korea or Iran, but rather in a Commonwealth country such as Australia? Absolutely disgusting and disturbing. And joining me now with more on this shocking story is our newest rebel, Avi Yemini. Welcome to Rebel Roundup, Avi.
Thanks for having me, mate.
It is a pleasure. Glad to see you on board. Avi, let's cut to the chase. In recent days, we've seen a pregnant woman in her pajamas being handcuffed and arrested for stating on social media she was going to a protest. Likewise, a soldier had his door smashed in by law enforcement for making a similar pronouncement. And then last Saturday, you were tackled to the ground for absolutely no valid reason whatsoever. Avi, what the hell is going on in Australia right now?
We're living in a police state here, and it's scary to see how quickly your rights can just be eroded like that, and that a police state, the people that are meant to serve and protect you suddenly gain some new powers, all in the name, under the pretense of fighting the virus, suddenly fighting their citizens. And that's what we're seeing here right now. And it is shocking. It is scary because I've been to Hong Kong to cover those protests, and I haven't seen that.
That's
a journalist
staggering.
standing there doing a piece to camera, tackled to the ground. It's shocking.
Yeah, you weren't giving any resistance. In fact, you were chuckling when the officer said he was putting you under arrest. Probably because you couldn't believe what you were hearing. So that was such an egregious overreaction, I thought. But, Avi, I want to back it up a bit. What we didn't show in the clip was your journey to the protest. And I saw something that had my jaw resting on the linoleum. You're pulled over by a COVID-19 checkpoint, and you have to show your permits, plural, for conducting journalism. I mean, Avi, for someone in Canada, someone in the US, we're just scratching our heads and going, what? Permits?
Mate,
to practice journalism? What's that about?
Someone in Victoria, if you told me that 3 months ago, I would have been scratching my head going, there's no chance that that's going to be here in Melbourne, Australia in 2020. It's a kind of story you hear, from this community, in the Jewish community here that I grew up in. It's a very big Holocaust survivor community. That's the kind of stories you hear from them, that you were only allowed to travel with documents to prove you're allowed to be in your own CBD. And as a journalist, that you have to, provide evidence that you're a journalist so you can go and cover a story in the CBD. It is craziness what is happening here. We're the only place in the world where our citizens are trapped. We got no right to movement anymore. The freedom of movement has been taken away from us. We're trapped here. There's no international flights coming in. You can't get out of Australia at the moment without a permit. Now, the permit's not easy to get. I'm an Australian Israeli citizen. I have dual citizenship. I can't go back to Israel. My mum lives in Israel. All my, I've got nephews and nieces, and my brothers and sisters. I've got hundreds of thousands of cousins really in Israel. I'm not allowed to go there as an Israeli citizen because in Australia, they will not allow me to jump on a flight out of this country. They're locking us up literally in our homes. There's a curfew at 8 p.m. And just yesterday, it turns out that, until now, the excuse has been that it is all under the direction of the chief health officer. Well, yesterday, the chief health officer said he didn't order the curfew, for example, the curfew specifically. He didn't order the curfew. So then the Premier, Daniel Andrews here, who claimed it was, who's been saying all the way through that it's only under the health advice that they're enforcing these rules. He said, oh, no, that one was specifically to make the job for police easier, to enforce the restrictions, which has two problems with it. One is, firstly, the police denied ever asking for it, so they didn't ask for it. And two is, well, that's a kind of argument the CCP make. We're going to impose curfews to make it easier for law enforcement to enforce these laws that strip you of all your rights in the first place. It is craziness.
And Avi, I remember on the video the police officer said to you at one point, you have no purposeful reason for being there. I mean, what, you need a purpose to go out in public in Australia these days? I mean, purpose at the moment, is I want to be there. I'm in a free country, ostensibly. What was that about?
Well, I agree with the sentiment. Yes, I'm in a free country. I should be allowed to go anywhere. But at the moment, the COVID restrictions say you need to have a permit with a purposeful reason listed on it as to why you're out of your the rules at the moment is you're allowed to be only within 5 k's of your house, one person at a time going to the supermarket. You're only allowed out for 1 hour a day to exercise. Anything beyond that, you need to have a permit. The thing is, I had the permit. I had the purposeful reason according to their dodgy guidelines, according to their overreach. I still complied. That's the crazy thing, is I still complied. As a free person, I should be able to go to the city for anything. But in this case, I was complying to their draconian laws, and still he argued with it because why? I'm the wrong kind of journalist. I'm the kind of journalist that criticizes this overreach. So he targeted me. And that's where the fight is coming back. And everyone jump on it. I think it's standwithavi.com. We're going to take this fight further. And I'm so excited to be part of the Rebel team, because that's what Rebel does, is they actually fight for their journalists. Because, I have been in situations in the past, if people that have followed me for a while know, I have been arrested at protests before. And it's almost like unless you've got the backing to stand up and fight, you kind of got to cop it on the chin. And I think the police that day expected me to cop it on the chin, because I have in the past just taken it and, I've showed it to the world, but that's as far as it's gone. Well, those days have ended. That's not as far as it's going to go this time.
Well, Avi, I can tell you this, now that you're on the Rebel team, our boss, Ezra Levent, he does not bend the knee. 3 days before your arrest, I was arrested for practicing journalism in Brampton, Ontario. The cops were much more gentle with me when they put me in the cruiser. But the thing is, the end result of that arrest was a $65 ticket for trespassing. And Ezra says, if it takes $65,000 to fight this all the way to the Supreme Court, we will do so. And that leads me to another question, another Ezraism, if I will, Avi, is that it seems to us that around the world, governments of all political stripes, governments of all levels, municipal, provincial, state, federal, certain politicians, certain bureaucrats have gone a little taste of totalitarian power. And you know what?
I love it.
They kind of like that taste. Is that what you're picking up? Is that the vibe you're getting in Australia right now?
Especially here in Victoria, in Melbourne, 100%. And what I was saying to you a minute ago just proves it. The fact that till now they've used the excuse of blaming the health advice. Well, it turns out it's not health advice. It was made on the whim of what we call Dictator Dan here, because he just makes up restrictions that really are just giving him more power. They get the taste for it and they're loving it. And it's a problem that if people don't stand up and fight it, well, what do you think is going to happen? Just apply some common sense is what I tell people. You know, you got somebody that's obviously power hungry, and a lot of these, premiers or state premiers or these politicians, they get into that industry because they want power. So the minute you've given them power under the idea of fighting a health thing, so they're explaining to their victims, oh no, we're only taking the power to protect you. The minute they get that power, how hard do you think it's going to be for them to release it? And that's exactly what we're seeing here. Yeah. It's escalated as COVID, as the evidence has come out to show us that maybe these lockdowns are not as helpful as we originally thought. Here, that's not translating on the street, on the ground. The lockdowns are escalating instead of loosening up and trying to deal with the crisis in a more sensible fashion. And that comes down to exactly what you're saying. They get a taste for the power and they're running with it.
Hey folks, if you can please visit journalistdefensefund.com. That's journalistdefensefund.com. If you're able to, make a donation so that Rebel News can continue to bring you the other side of the story.